Hi guys, this is Cody with Group 8. I'm going to be starting us off for Chapter 9, Domestic U.S. and Global Logistics. I want to start off saying I apologize if you hear it raining outside because it's really stormy here. Alright, so let's start. Chapter outline and definition of logistics. Alright, you've probably seen a lot that we're going to be going over in this presentation from our last quiz, but I'm sure a lot of it's going to show up again in the exam coming up Monday. Alright, so this chapter discusses many logistic activities as well as explains various logistics nomenclature and related events that affect businesses and the supply chains every day. This chapter covers modes of transportation, transportation regulation and deregulation, warehousing and distribution, the impact of logistics on supply chain management, the global issues affecting logistics, the impact of e-commerce on logistic activities, and the management of product returns, also called reverse logistics. Now, you've heard me say logistics like 7 times there, so the definition of logistics is the process of planning, implementing, and controlling procedures for the efficient and effective transportation and storage of goods, including services and related information from the point of origin to the point of consumption for the purpose of conforming to customer requirements. All right, now we move on to transportation, which is the largest section in this chapter, actually, because it's the most important. Transportation fundamentals. Transportation presents a number of complex issues in logistics. Beyond making sure products reach their destinations, the main objective of transportation is to satisfy customer requirements while minimizing costs and making a reasonable profit. Now, the 4 legal forms of transportation service carrier companies are known as common, contract, exempt, and private, and we'll be going over those next. And most of these transportation carriers, they're pretty similar, but they have a couple of distinct differences. I've also included a couple examples for each one, just to, give you a better picture for them. All right, common carriers offer their transportation services to the general public without discrimination, meaning they charge the same rate for everybody that's on them. And this is included, with like Southwest Air, Amtrak, UPS, Greyhound, Carnival Cruise Line. Anyone that's, part of this transportation service, they get the same price, same service, no special contracts, nothing. And then contract carriers are these same common carriers, or could be some others, that have entered into a specific contract for a certain cargo or a certain agreed upon price. When under this contract, they're not bound to serve the general public. For example, Southwest Air may enter into a contract with the Dallas Cowboys to, provide transportation for their team. When they're transporting the players, they're not required to, have general public on there, just on the plane ride to go, sit with the Dallas Cowboys. I would, cause issues with the team and everything. Now, exempt carriers are special for-hire carriers that are exempt from the regulation of services and rates. This exempt status was originally established so farmers could transport their products on public roads, but today this status is available for a number of different commodities. It just allows certain companies to get around some issues that they might have otherwise. And examples of this are any rural or farmers that are transporting produce, livestock. I'm sure everybody's seen people transporting cows or chickens on the road. And then coal, garbage, newspapers, school buses, taxis, ambulances, so on and so forth. And then private carriers are not subject to economic regulation and are typically transport goods for whatever company owns that carrier. They'll typically be branded and owned by a large firm. And everyone has seen this with like Coca-Cola trucks, or the example I have here at Walmart. They only carry Walmart stock. They don't have to do anything for the general public. They don't have any outside contracts. They're only for the firm that owns them. And now we have the 5 modes of transportation. And the first and the most flexible one is motor or trucks. And they account for 70% of freight tonnage moved in the United States. These trucks offer door-to-door shipping, local pickup and delivery, and small to large hauling. And this motor transportation is classified in 2 different types of carriers. One is less than truckload and truckload carriers. And the name's kind of self-explanatory. The less than truckload carriers normally carry small loads, and truckload carriers carry larger loads, such as, for example, at Walmart, that's carrying a large amount of stock. For example, they're probably carrying a lot of toilet paper right now. And then rail, which compete most favorably when the distance is long and shipments are heavy or bulky, as opposed to motor and other types of carriers. They're cheaper, but they also are very slow and inflexible. If there's an issue with the railroad, that's it, the train's stuck. But the share of like rail has gone way down since World War II, as there's been more and more options for transportation, like air and motor, where speed is everything today. And while rail may be reliable or whatnot, you got to get there as quick as possible. And continued, we have air, which I mentioned earlier. Is very expensive relative to the other modes, but it's also very fast, and particularly for long distances. Say, for example, that you have to ship something from America to Japan. Your only other option for that is water, which I'll get to next, and that's way too long. Air carriers account for only a small portion of total freight hauled, since aircraft cannot carry extremely heavy or bulky cargo. And about half the goods transported by air are carried by freight-only airlines by FedEx. And then water is very inexpensive, but it's very, very slow and inflexible. Ship, it's like you're back in, medieval times trying to ship something. It takes months or whatnot. And there's several types of water transportation, being inland waterway, lake, coastal, intercoastal, ocean, and global deep sea carriers. And there's also pipeline carriers, and they're very specialized with respect to the products they carry. However, once the initial investment of the pipeline is covered, there's very little maintenance costs. So long-term pipeline transportation tends to be very inexpensive. Next, these pipelines are, hauling just the raw material, such as like, liquid or gases, like, whether it's gasoline being transported through pipes or coal or whatnot. It's much easier for these pipes to carry this instead of having large containers carried on a ship or on a plane. So these pipelines, once they're set up, while it may take a long time, the return you get from it is much better. And again, I'm sorry for the rain. Transportation prices. The two basic pricing strategies used by logistics service providers are cost of service pricing and value of service pricing. Further, when the shipments are large enough, carriers and shippers enter into negotiated pricing. Obviously, shippers want low prices and carriers want high prices, and these desires are often at odds with one another. All right, cost of service. Used when carriers establish prices based on their fixed and variable costs of transportation. Value of service. Prices are based on a level of competition and the current demand for each service. And negotiate kind of is this middle ground between the two, allowing carriers to cover their fixed and variable costs and make a reasonable profit, while allowing shippers to get the logistic services they want at reasonable prices. And then there's transportation regulation and deregulation in the United States. Regulation is argued by many to be good, that it tends to ensure adequate transportation service throughout the company while protecting customers in terms of monopoly pricing, safety, and liabilities. And some acts I provided, for example, that are regulation acts are the Granger Laws, Interstate Commerce Act, Transportation Act, Motor Carrier Act, Civil Aeronautics Act, and etc. There's a full list of these. There's like 25, maybe more of them in your book. See Table 9.2 in Chapter 9. And then deregulation, which there was a question for this actually on the quiz, it's argued to be good because it encourages competition and allows prices to adjust as supply and demand and negotiations dictate. Examples of this are Railroad Revitalization and Regulatory Reform Act, Air Cargo Deregulation Act, Air Passenger Deregulation Act, Motor Carrier Act of 1980, Staggers Rail Act, etc. And again, there's another table that includes all these deregulation acts in case you may need them for the exam coming up. And again, there's like 25 of them. And that'll be it for the transportation section.